There is a number so large it stops working as a number. $50 trillion. Say it and nothing happens in your head. That is exactly why it hides. Here's what it is. Since 1975, about $50 trillion did not go to the bottom 90% of Americans that, under the old rules, would have. This is case file 10, not a metaphor, a measured gap between what working people earned and what they'd have earned if the deal from the 1970s had simply held. It is not money that vanished. Every dollar went somewhere, up, and this file is the receipt for where. The word trillion is the disguise, so let us shrink it to something you can feel, a paycheck, yours. Because a heist this size cannot happen in a night. A vault holds billions, not trillions. 50 trillion has to be taken, the only way that much ever moves, slowly, and from almost every, little from each paycheck. A raise that was earned but never arrived, multiplied by 150 million workers across 50 years. No alarm ever went off, because nothing was ever taken in the way a law recognizes. The rules were simply rewritten so the money flowed a new direction. And the people it flowed from were told every year that this was normal. The market, your fault, just how it works now. So this file does what the word trillion was built to prevent. It makes 50 trillion small enough to see and traces the line back to your kitchen table. Start fair, because fairness is the whole method here. The economy did grow. Per person, America roughly doubled its output since 1975. The pie got bigger. And growth is not theft. Nobody in this file is angry that the country got richer. The question is only this: who got the growth? For the first 30 years after the war, the answer was roughly everyone. When the economy grew, wages up and down the ladder grew with it. That was the deal. Then, around 1975, the deal quietly changed. Output kept climbing, but the pay of most workers flattened and stayed flat decade after decade. The two lines, what the country produced and what regular people were paid, came apart. One kept rising, the other lay down. The space between them is the 50 trillion. That gap did not open in a crash you'd remember. It opened a hair's width a year for half a century. Too slow to feel, impossible to protest. And a slow leak needs no mask. Nobody hides a number that moves 1 point a year. They just never stand it next to your paycheck. Every year the gap was explained away. A recession, a recovery, globalization, technology, your skills, their genius. Never the rules. But you felt it anyway, working more, owing more, saving less, running harder to hold the same spot. That feeling was not weakness, it was data. So let us do what the evening news never did. Put the growth of the country next to the pay of its workers and measure the gap between them. This is not a slogan, it is arithmetic, done by the Rand Corporation, a research institution that builds war plans for the Pentagon. Not exactly a den of radicals. Rand asked one clean question. If income had grown the way it did in the decades after the war, evenly up and down the ladder, how much more would ordinary workers have? They compared what the bottom 90% actually earned to that counterfactual, year by year from 1975 to 2008. The answer for a single year, 2018 alone, the bottom 90%'s income would have been $2.5 trillion higher in 1 year. $2.5 trillion every year, compounding. Added across the decades, and the cumulative gap through 2018 reaches $47 trillion. At $2.5 trillion a year, that number crossed $50 trillion by 2020. $50 trillion of income that the old rules would have sent down and the new rules sent up. Rand updated the study through 2023. The new figure, $79 trillion. Nearly 80. To be precise, because precision is the point, this is not cash pulled from a drawer. It is income share, the raises that the old distribution would have delivered and the new one did not. Here is how lopsided the growth was. For a worker at the very middle, income grew at less than a third of the rate the overall economy did. Less. than a third. Meanwhile, at the 99th percentile, income grew faster than the economy, and for the top 1%, several times faster. The growth was real, it just had an address. That is the whole engine in one line. The country's output raced ahead, the typical paycheck crawled, and the distance between them is the heist. So the question is no longer whether it happened. Rand measured it. The question is what 47, now $79 trillion did to one life, yours. Let us finally make the trillion small. Take that $2.5 trillion gap from a single year and spread it across the workers it was owed to. It works out to roughly $1,100 a month for a typical worker in the bottom 90%. Money that the old deal would have put in your pocket, gone quietly every month. $1,100 a month is not abstract. It is rent. It is childcare. It is the difference between saving and drowning. It is the emergency you had to borrow for. And that is the average. Look at a full-time worker standing right at the middle of the country, and Rand's number gets sharper still. That median full-time worker earned about $50,000 in 2018. Under the old deal, the same job, the same hours would have paid about $92,000. $92,000 instead of $50. Not a bonus, not luck. The same work, priced the way the country used to price it, nearly double. Fit with the size of that. Half a lifetime of feeling like you were falling behind. And here is the receipt showing you actually were, by tens of thousands of dollars a year. And here is the cruelty of the slow version. Because the raise never arrived, you never mourned it. You cannot grieve a paycheck you were never told you earned. So you did the human thing. You blamed yourself, or the family down the street, or the last election. Anything but a rule you were never shown. The corkboard from every file before this one knows the shape. A number soaring at the top, a worker shrinking at the bottom, a story in between, pointing everywhere but up. So pin the Rand number where the suspect photo goes. 50 trillion is not the crime. It is the measured size of what the crime removed from you. Now do the one thing the slow heist was designed to prevent. Follow the money. Ask where $2.5 trillion a year actually went. Follow it up. The share that stopped flowing to wages did not evaporate. The economy kept it and handed it to owners, not workers. The Rand lines say so. The fairness beat, because it is owed. Not every person at the top schemed for this. Many just owned the right things, while the rules quietly bent their way. But the rules did bend, and we can name the levers, the ones this whole season takes apart, one file at a time. Pay came unhooked from what workers produced. Taxes on the highest incomes and on wealth were cut again and again. Company profits went to buying back stock instead of raising pay. The power that once let workers bargain for a share was weakened by design. Each lever, a little more of the $2.5 trillion, redirected upward. And here is the part that ends the argument about blame. This did not happen under one party. It happened under all of them. The line kept climbing through every administration, which means the honest frame is not left against right. It is up against down. The machine does not care how you vote. It cares that you keep looking sideways. Because as long as you are arguing with your neighbor about the culture war, you are not reading the receipt. The fight was the misdirection. The transfer was the trick. $50 trillion is what a distracted country costs itself. Not stolen in the dark, moved in the open, while everyone was told to watch something else. So bring the two lines back onto one screen, what you made and what you were paid, and you can finally see the shape of where it all went. The $50 trillion heist. Translation: over your working life, the rules were rewritten so that the growth you helped create flowed past you to the top. The receipts say it was not a storm, not a market law, not your failing. It was a series of choices, each defensible alone, devastating together, and never put to a vote as a whole. And here is the truth this file was built to hand you. A number built by choices can be unbuilt by choices. 50 trillion moved one rule at a time. it can move back the same way. The heist is not a prophecy. It is a ledger, still open, still being written, and now you can read it. 50 years to move 50 trillion up. The only question left is whether the next 50 send any of it back, and that answer starts the moment you stop looking sideways. Case file 10 is closed. Next, the treadmill. You produce more every decade, and you are paid the same, not by accident, by design. We show you the math that keeps you running in place.